That's when I realized I wanna make a difference, change other people's lives, give hope even for a moment, use my name for good, and change the game I could.
You are fearfully and wonderfully made. God has already equipped you with everything you need to walk in your destiny. You are rich in talent, spirit, and finances. You just need to claim it and walk in it. You are Medleyonaires, rich in a medley of riches. Hey Medleyonaires, it's time for a story time. I have decided to start doing these story times more often. They are a great way for me to be able to communicate with you all different lessons that I've learned in my life. And I just want you to be able to be open and know that I am open with you all. So, my story time today is about toxic friends, and this is something that I personally have experienced, having a set of friends that you thought were friends but were very toxic. And this particular group of friends completely destroyed my life years ago. I met them in high school and we became friends pretty quickly. I was always a person that just had no problems with making friends. I was not the most popular, so when I did make a friend, it was typically, you know, a it was typically another shy person like me. This group of friends, they were actually sisters, and I can remember pretty quickly that they would skip class. And one time I skipped class with them, which I was not that type of kid. I was a goody two shoes kid. I was raised in an environment where they weren't goody two shoes around me. Everyone around me was doing illegal things and just, a lot of stuff. I did venture into some of that stuff as a kid because I was following what was being taught to me. But deep inside, I was not that kid. I went to class, I did what I was supposed to do. I was a people pleaser, and that people pleaser part of me is what landed me in this situation. So, fast forward after I met these girls and I moved schools and I somehow kept in touch with them, but not a lot. Well, come to the end of my senior year, and they began talking to me about how they wanted to move out. They wanted to get in an apartment where I was near where I was living, and that they wanted me to roommate with them. Originally, I was like, okay, let's do it. I went and I signed the paperwork to get an apartment, and then I told my grandmother, and she was like, no, why would you do that? I don't trust these people. I don't think that it's a good idea. And she was like, I don't think you should do it. I'll help you go get off the lease. So she went with me to the office, and we took myself off the lease. I should have listened and I should have paid attention because that was one of the best things she could have done for me. However, I was becoming a very rebellious teen. My grandmother took custody of me at 15, and up until then, I basically had raised myself, and so I was very rebellious. I didn't want anybody telling me what to do. I was like, I've done it this far. I know what I'm doing. I don't want to hear it. I don't want you telling me things to do and you're only doing it to make yourself look better. And I was just really in a rebellious state. And it took me years before I realized the love that she had for me and what she was trying to show me in my life. So I ended up in the middle of a fight with my grandmother, moving out. Never a good way to move out. Never ever. And I moved in with these people who had got the apartment that I had originally been on the lease for, but now I was no longer on the lease. I moved in with them. And that was one of the worst decisions I ever made in my life. It started off fine. It seemed fun. Yay, we have an apartment. We're out on our own. We're grown. I had always worked. I had never, ever, ever been afraid of working. So I would work. It got to the point where they would not always work. One of the girls started showing a lot of signs of depression and horrible self-worth. And so she would stay home and not make money, and then all of the financial responsibilities would be on me. And there was her sister, and then there was also her boyfriend at the time, who all lived with us. So we would end up with all the financial responsibility, and we ended up getting in a lot of debt, and we ended up taking out credit cards that were unnecessary. I slowly but surely started becoming very depressed. I noticed that, well, I didn't notice this until afterwards, but they had started speaking into my ear about all the people who were surrounded me. My then best friend, who is, again, my best friend now, but my best friend at that time in high school, my boyfriend, who is now my husband, but my boyfriend at the time in high school, my grandmother, they slowly started speaking things into my ear about how they're not there for you and you don't need them. Or they convinced me that my boyfriend was cheating on me because we went to different schools. They convinced me that my best friend was no good for me and was too close to my boyfriend. And just the talking eventually got to me. I was very easily persuaded at that time. When I look back now, I'm like, there's no way I would hear anything that they were saying now. But then I did. Then I was still very, very impressionable. And so I looked up, and it was just them. I had eliminated everyone from my life, and that is one of the first things that abusers do. It was a case of abusive friends. However, there are people who find themselves in relationships, romantic relationships like this, where that person has alienated them from their entire family and friends, to where nobody else is there to tell you something's not right, you need to listen, you need to go away, whatever. I think it was about a year that I lived there, and it just continued to go downhill, and they became very psychotic. Like, it became horrible. It got so bad that I attempted suicide while living there. I just snapped, and I just was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I went and I cut my wrist and went in the bathroom and locked the bathroom, and I cut my wrist in front of them, so they are banging on the door and trying to stop me. I was blessed enough that you can still see the scars, but I was blessed enough to where I did not cut all the way across, and I didn't get my main artery. So God preserved me. When I finally got fed up, I left, and I slept under my friend's dresser, because I had a friend that was in a adult living program. Like, she had come out of foster care system, and so she had an apartment where she wasn't allowed to have anyone sleep over, but she snuck me into her place, let me sleep under her dresser so that I wouldn't get caught. And they did come and check, and I was under that dresser. And the next morning, I called the battered women's shelters. You know, growing up, I had lived in battered women's shelters with my mother, and so I knew that that was a great alternative to go to when you're homeless. But it was like a lot nicer than a homeless shelter. There's 3 meals a day, you have a nice bed, you have counselors, you get to go through counseling and all that stuff. So yeah, I called a battered women's shelter and went to the police station and stayed there. You know, because I had been so brainwashed by these people, I didn't think I could go back home to my grandmother. Eventually I started speaking to my grandmother again, and she told me that I was welcome to come back home if I wanted to go back to school. I said, I want to go back to school. Can I come stay with you? And I did. I went back home. The lesson that I learned years later is that you really find out who has your back, who was really there for you when you go through something strong, something life-changing like that. I was embarrassed for years to talk about it, because I'm so different than that person that I was then. Like, there's no way, no way, no way. I get so ready to fight when I think about it. Like, I am not ever gonna let anybody do that to me again. But I was embarrassed to talk about it because, that's embarrassing to know that I allowed these people to get into my brain, and that I was so brainwashed by the time I left there that, like, I didn't think I was worth anything. My self-worth was horrible. There was a lot of jealousy with those girls, and I did not realize that then, but because of their jealousy, they beat me down. But it was in a very slick way, like very slick way, to where eventually I felt like I had no self-worth. So my point in sharing this story is that I really, really, really want to emphasize to watch who you allow to be your friends, to be very careful about it. God has called us to love everybody, but not be friends with everybody. They're not. Some people are toxic. Some people are sent from the devil himself to ruin your life, to keep you from your assignment and what you're called to do. The devil has known, that I had an assignment on my life, and I allowed him to mess me up for a whole year. But out of that came a great testimony. Out of that came a stronger person. Out of that came a person who I now know how strong I am and how I can avoid this situation in the future. I don't have any contact with those girls anymore, but I still pray for them, because the amount of depression and self-hatred that they had for themselves had to be miserable. And so it was specifically the youngest sister. And I pray that she was able to find herself and to learn her value in God, because to put someone else through that, she had to be very, very miserable. And I'm pretty sure her and the boyfriend broke up, and he went elsewhere eventually. I saw him at one point in time, and he chased me and tried to scare me because they had convinced me that I owed them money, which is not true at all. Like, not true. I had signed over my car to them because they convinced me that I owed them my car. And it took my uncle stepping in and knocking on their door and saying, "You need to give this car back." And they met me at the car place and signed it back over to me. And I was able to have my car again. But there were months that I went without my car. So yeah, I truly, truly believe that what goes around comes around, and that God will always take care of it. But I still have the heart of God, and I still pray for them, and I still want and wish that they were able to get it together, for their own sakes and for other people's sakes. And I pray that everyone steers clear of them. But yeah, that's my story about toxic friends. I really, really hope that I was able to shed some light on how it happens, how it's a slow process, and how it's not an immediate, you don't normally notice someone's controlling until you're far deep into it, because it starts off great in the beginning, just like a controlling mate. It starts off wonderful, and then it's little things, until you look up and it's horrible. So I just thank you for watching. If you have any questions or have been through this situation, I'm continuously praying for you, and I pray that you are healed in Jesus' name.